Well, I want to talk about what is happening between the press and the Pentagon.
Yep. Lots of people are asking me about this.
Yes, because I've shared a few clips about it, and I've been sharing clips about it on my stories because I'm really trying to figure out how do I feel.
Mhm.
Because as I'm sharing it, people are like, "So what are your thoughts?" And I'm like, "I
Yeah.
don't know yet." Like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna because I'm not flippant with sharing my thoughts. Now,
Mhm.
to give everybody an update, what is going on? So, the Department of War, formerly Department of Defense,
I'm still not used to
issued.
saying that. I'm still
I
not
know,
used to
it's
it
kind of
yet.
weird. So on October 8th, they issued a memo from the Assistant Secretary of War implementing, quote, an updated physical control measurements for press media access within the Pentagon. This essentially, now the media is trying to make this as like a media pledge. I don't think
Mhm.
it's a pledge per se. I think that's just kind of like a talking point.
Mhm.
But to give you a rundown of what are the new requirements or what is this, because the document that was being given to them laid them all out and the media had to sign it before, I think it was like the 15th or the
No, it
14th.
was the 14th. Yeah.
Okay. And then
At
if they
5
didn't
PM.
sign it, they're not gonna have their passes to be able to come onto the campus of the Pentagon. So first there was physical restrictions. The press is now banned from entire floors of the Pentagon. The third, fourth, and fifth floors, basement and mezzanine levels are completely off limits. And the only floors that remain access to them are, I think, on the first and second, but it's only the courtyard and the food court. And otherwise they have to like stay restricted. I don't even think there's only a handful of them that still had offices at the Department of
Yeah.
Defense because there was also like a switch out, but everything else requires an escort from the Department of War. There's also the controversial part is the handling of information
Mhm.
requirements. And so the document says that journalists, quote, are not required to submit their writings to the Department of War for approval, which sounds good. But
Yeah.
then it adds that if reporters obtain classified or controlled unclassified information, that they, quote, should discuss those materials with the Pentagon press operations prior to publication. And that
And
was
that
one of
was
the things
that was a sticking point.
that was the sticking point. And
Mhm.
now there was also a warning that the document distinguishes between lawful requesting information and actively soliciting or encouraging employees to break the law. So there's a big
Mhm.
difference between, hey, can you get me access to this reported alleged report I've heard about?
Mhm.
Versus if an employee decides to take the risk upon themselves and leak
Of
something.
handing it to a
Yeah, I think
journalist,
I
yeah.
think that's the distinction there. And it says that falls outside the scope of protected news gathering activities. And then the enforcement would be that they would lose their press credential, determines you a security risk included for unauthorized disclosure of information or for publications that, quote, recklessly endanger American lives. And then the document explicitly said that access to the Pentagon is a privilege subject to the discretion of the government authorities, not a constitutional right.
Mhm.
So while technically not requiring them like pre-approval, because a lot of times there was this talking point of like, so you're saying that the Pentagon has to approve our reporting before we can publish it. That's not it, but they are saying that they need to, or at least you need to run it by them,
Yeah.
the information that you have gathered. Now, if you decide to publish, like let's say they don't like it and you decide to publish it, you would put your press pass at risk. But then I
Yeah.
think you could probably challenge that. Honestly, I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
Ultimately, none of the press has signed it except for OAN. But Fox News, NBC, ABC, The Atlantic, The Hill, like anyone who had,
Even the
I think,
Washington Examiner,
and Newsmax too.
Newsmax, yeah, all of them.
So it was
OAN was the
both,
only one.
yeah, they've both kind of like left and right have been in opposition to this. And I think it was yesterday where they all essentially walked out. They took their boxes with them and
Mhm.
left. Now, I saw today a very interesting debate about this because I'm really trying to figure out, like, because I am very averse to restriction on the freedom of press. However, I've also heard multiple reports that there was a time where the press was basically just kind of running around the
Palling
Pentagon.
around,
And so now Hegseth's saying, like, we're not doing that anymore,
right?
which, in my opinion, it's just making it more difficult for the press, as in, like, they actually have to work harder for their reports,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily, I mean, I don't think it's an attack on freedom of speech. You can still report it. You can still, but I want to play this debate with, so I saw it this morning on two-way between Mark, Dan, and Sean.
Okay.
And Sean Spicer was basically making the case in defense of the document while Mark and Dan were in opposition.
Okay.
Press. I've press that holds people accountable, especially our government, because I don't even just believe whether it's Republican or Democrat. I believe that the bureaucracy is a problem, regardless of administration, should be held accountable, right? And the Department of Defense, in terms of the volume of money and authority, absolutely. But where I think this is, again, missing the point is there is a difference between the ability to cover and to have freedom to write whatever you want, which I am a staunch defender of, and the ability to say you get to come into our house. I don't get to go to the AP. I can't even go to, the idea that you're saying you can come into our building, have free reign and access to all of this.
Not your building, it's our building.
It's our building, Sean.
Sure.
Name
another building.
Here's what Pete Hegseth tweeted. Pentagon access is a privilege, not a right. So
access.
It
is.
It's not.
Not.
Oh my God.
Not.
Credentialed press no longer permitted to solicit criminal acts.
Sean, you sound like the White House Correspondents Association.
Yeah.
You say that you have a privilege to go into a right to go into any government building? Are you kidding me?
They're all the people's houses, not your house.
Let's go. Open them all up.
They are. It's federal.
All right.
I think that's a really interesting argument because I had several people in my community when I shared about it on the Dawn Dispatch 2 days ago, I think.
Yeah.
And people were commenting and saying, look, I don't disagree with what the Department of War is doing. I don't have a right to just walk into the Pentagon and traipse around wherever I want and, gather whatever information I want. There's guardrails put there. And I think what Sean Spicer is saying is important because, it's the Department of War right now. But then what about all of the other agencies? I don't think that the press or any civilian just has the right to walk into any area, any federal building and just rifle through whatever they want or go into whatever offices they want or, kind of schmooze and demand whatever intel, especially too. This is also the Department of War. There are things in the Pentagon that I don't want public for consumption, for everybody. I don't know necessarily. I think there's a safety issue that comes with that too. What did you think about what Sean Spicer said?
I think I kind of agree with that. And I also didn't get this whole they're like, well, it's the people's Pentagon.
People's house.
I'm like,
no,
so
it's
is
not
the White House.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was going to say too.
Like, there's multiple government installations or institutions.
Yeah.
Like, you can even make an argument that every military base belongs to people.
To the people, yeah. And
Like,
that's not
so
or
I should
even
just,
your state and local government. I can't walk into the Virginia State House and be like, hey, I'm press, let me in and tell me everything. There's guardrails, there's rules, and there's also things that need to be kept private or at least need to go through some kind of authority structure before they're released. And I don't know. I think that it's the elevation of press and how much access press has always had, or at least in the recent past, to where when guardrails are put, it makes them uncomfortable. It's kind of like now that Democrats are being questioned by the press, by the new press, they're all uncomfortable because it hasn't happened in the past, 2 decades.